With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. An open line Friday. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I'd love to have you. You can help set the tone of the conversation today and the topics. You can also text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 to get the show links, the podcast, the daily email. You should get the show notes today. And you can, just by texting Eric to 33777, when the pre-order link is available for my new book, You Shall Be As Gods, I will send you a note with the link so that you can pre-order it and make my book an unbelievable bestseller. Now, we got to begin in Kentucky. There is polling out in Kentucky. Daniel Cameron is the Attorney General of Kentucky. He is black. He is Republican. He is a threat to the Democratic order. Having a black governor who's not a Democrat is a threat to the Democrats. They do not like it. Cameron had been behind in the polls. He was 20 points behind, then he was 15 points behind, then he was 10 points behind. Then he was 5 points behind. He's been gaining ground. Andy Beshear is a progressive who hides as a moderate in Kentucky thanks to the Republicans in Kentucky. So Andy Beshear is a progressive. Andy Beshear barred churches from assembling during COVID. Andy Beshear tried to mandate the COVID vaccine. Andy Beshear vetoed legislation that prohibited transgender sex reassignment surgeries for minors. Andy Beshear vetoed legislation that would prohibit boys from playing in girls' sports. But then the state legislature, Republicans have a supermajority in the state legislature. And the Republicans overrode Andy Beshear's vetoes. So the Republicans overrode Andy Beshear's veto of transgender surgery for minors. They overrode his veto of where he wanted to allow boys to be in girls' sports, and the legislature said no. So what did Andy Beshear do? Well, he campaigned in Kentucky that, well, your daughters are safe on their sports teams because in Kentucky, boys can't be on girls' sports teams. In Kentucky, we don't allow that crazy sex reassignment surgery for minors. Now, Andy Beshear wanted to have sex reassignment surgery for minors, and he wanted boys to be on girls' sports, but the legislature overrode his vetoes so that those things were prohibited, and then he campaigned as if he supported the laws. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, the Democrats in Kentucky have begun to attack Daniel Cameron for being a black Republican. They've resorted to calling Daniel Cameron an Uncle Tom. Pretty racist attacks. They want everyone to know that all the white Democrats in Virginia, they want them to know he's black. Making sure that the male pieces, he's very, very dark-skinned. Very much what the Democrats did to Bobby Jindal when he was running for governor in Louisiana. Bobby Jindal is dark-skinned from the Indian subcontinent, his family, and they darkened his complexion and male pieces in Louisiana to make him seem even blacker. Same with Daniel Cameron in Kentucky. They're referring to him as an Uncle Tom. The Democrats always resort to racism when threatened by a non-white Republican. It's what they do. Emerson College polling in Kentucky now has the race tied, and when you push people who they're going to vote for, Daniel Cameron wins. Emerson is a good pollster, has a good track record in Kentucky. So there's a huge meltdown in Kentucky among Democrats. They're starting to panic. But it's not just Virginia. The state legislative elections are happening in Virginia. You've got Kentucky will have elections on Tuesday, and Virginia will have elections on Tuesday. The Virginia Republicans have been firing on all cylinders. And what's notable in Virginia, and it's the same in Kentucky, is that the major media outlets, the newspapers in particular, are refusing to cover these sorts of things. The newspapers in Kentucky don't want to cover that Andy Beshear's Democrat supporters are calling Daniel Cameron an Uncle Tom. And in Virginia, the Richmond Times-Dispatch of the Washington Post has flat out refused to report on Sam Razul, who is a Democrat in the state legislature, who appeared at a pro-Hamas rally where people were holding up signs that said, quote, "End the American empire," and "From river to sea, the genocidal call of Hamas to eradicate Israel and the Jews." Rasul not only spoke, he was wearing his appropriate scarf to make it look like he was Palestinian or with the Palestinians. He spoke. He didn't just attend, he spoke at a rally. You have a Virginia Democrat who spoke at a rally that supported and the crowd wanted the Jewish people to die. They wanted the annihilation of Israel. And the media, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the Washington Post, they're not covering it. Like they tried their hardest not to cover the porn star Democrat, the middle-class mom and nurse, who it turns out she's also a porn star in her private life. They didn't want to cover that one either. The media has been trying to cover these things up. And the point here is that being a Democrat means you never have to say sorry. When Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican from Georgia, says something that offends the sensibility of Democrats, every major media outlet shoves microphones in the faces of every Republican legislator and demands to know, do they support Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments? Rashida Tlaib can lie about Israel, call it a genocidal state, and support death to the Jews, and the Democrats never have to be asked about it. Republicans all must take a stand on George Santos. No one must take a stand on Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitism because she's a Democrat. You never have to say you're sorry when you're a Democrat. Tim Scott was called an Uncle Tom on the campaign trail by Democrats in Iowa. Joe Biden was never asked about it. What do you think of Democrats calling Tim Scott an Uncle Tom? Kamala Harris was never asked about it. Nikki Haley has been vilified by Democrats for being a transplant. The Democrats have started birtherizing Nikki Haley, saying, well, she can't really run because her parents are from India. Democrats are doing that, not Republicans. The Democrats, nobody's asking. Nobody in the media cares to ask them. It's a real double standard. And this is the pattern here. And you know what this does is it actually emboldens the worst behaviors of the Republicans, because the Republicans are like, well, if the Democrats get away with it, screw it. We're going to do it. Sure, we'll be held accountable and the media will be upset, but we're going to do it, and then we're going to point out they never did this to Democrats. Why are you only doing it to us? And it emboldens worst impulses. But I got to tell you, it is increasingly clear. I mean, it's been clear for a very long time. It's so much more explicit now how so many major organizations within the media that were always on the left and always sympathetic to the Democrats, but tried to at least give the veneer of playing it fair, they're done. They don't care at all. Can you imagine what it would be? Can you imagine what the Richmond Times-Dispatch in Richmond, Virginia would do if a Republican showed up at a Klan rally? It would be on the front page of that newspaper. Every reporter would be asking every Republican in the Virginia legislature and Washington, D.C. about it. Because this has happened. Remember, we had like a podunk mayor from the South who was a Republican who said something racist, and members of Congress were getting asked about the guy. You have Sam Razul, who's an elected official Democrat in Virginia, showing up at a rally that calls for the end of American empire and from river to sea and death to the Jews and all of that. And nobody is asked about it in the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Washington Post. Remember when George Allen did the macaca statement? Huge story on the front page of the Washington Post. None of them have said jack about this guy going to a rally that explicitly calls for the end of Israel, death of the Jews, and the end of the United States. They will not report it. In Kentucky, they will not report on the racism leveled against Daniel Cameron by the Democrats. Because they picked a side. It's why herpes and gonorrhea have more respect and trust of the American people than reporters do these days. I mean, when herpes is more popular in the United States than employees of the Washington Post, you got problems, but the media's not going to change because they're on a side. They've always been on the side, but now the camouflage is off. They're not even trying anymore. Democracy dies in the darkness, my foot. The Washington Post doesn't care about democracy. They care about getting Democrats elected. They've decided the Democratic Party are the bastions of democracy. Therefore, anything they can do to help that side, they will do, and anything that hurts that side, they will ignore because there are no enemies to the left. It is one of the bedrock principles of postmodern Marxism. There are no enemies to the left. So it doesn't matter how bad the person is on the left. It doesn't matter how virulently anti-Semitic Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest are. They're not going to cover it. A anti-Hamas resolution passed the House of Representatives last night. 23 people voted against a resolution in the House of Representatives. The resolution condemned Hamas and condemned the rise of anti-Semitism. House lawmakers approved a resolution condemning the support of terrorist organizations and anti-Semitism on college campuses on a 396-23 bipartisan vote Thursday. The resolution is Congress's latest response to the rise in pro-Palestinian student demonstrations on campuses around the Israel-Hamas conflict. The House resolution was introduced by Representative Burgess Owens, Republican of Utah. His resolution denounced several demonstrations held in support of the October 7th attacks, including the Day of Resistance organized by the National Students for Justice in Palestine. Representative Kathy Manning, Democrat of North Carolina, spoke on the floor Wednesday in support of the resolution. 23 people, all Democrats, voted against it. I can't tell you who they are. The media won't give me their names. If the Republicans voted against it, they would be listed in the story from Politico, but it was all Democrats. So the Politico will not give us the names of the 23 Democrats who voted no. Only the Democrats who supported it are profiled, not a single one. They won't report on a Virginia Democratic legislator at a rally calling for the end of Israel in the United States. They won't report on the racist attacks against Daniel Cameron as he's on the verge of winning in Kentucky. They won't report on the anti-Semites in Congress who voted against a resolution denouncing Hamas. They won't do it because they're on the side of the Hamas supporters. They're on the side of the racist Democrats. Every single Republican gets questioned every time some Republican says something stupid. No Democrat ever has to be questioned on when a Democrat says something anti-Semitic or racist because the media is on the side of the anti-Semites and the racists. It's that straightforward. As long as the anti-Semites and the racists have a D next to their name, the media will take their side, convinced that they're far better for democracy than any Republican. Those of you in Kentucky, those of you in Virginia, be on notice. The best way to deal with this issue is to vote Republican on Tuesday. Your election is on Tuesday. You can vote by absentee ballot today or go vote on Tuesday for Daniel Cameron in Kentucky and the Republicans in the legislature in Virginia if you live in Virginia. These things matter. They matter greatly. And the best way to fight back is to vote against the Democrats and for the Republicans and stick it to them and their friends in the media. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, happy to have you. As always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 to get the show notes, and you'll also get an advanced alert when it's time to pre-order my book. I got to go back to TikTok. I mentioned TikTok the other week and how nefarious TikTok is. The Free Press has a story today. 51% of Americans aged 18 to 24 believe Hamas was justified in its attack on Israel on October 7th. 51%. You know what a lot of people are pointing to? TikTok. China has elevated pro-Hamas propaganda, it appears, in TikTok. A lot of people are getting a lot of pro-Hamas propaganda in the TikTok algorithm. This is from the Free Press. TikTok is not just an app teenagers use to make viral dance videos. A growing number of Americans rely on it for their news. TikTok is the top search engine for more than half of Gen Z, and about 6 in 10 Americans are hooked on the app before their 17th birthday. And it's controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. TikTok's parent company ByteDance is Chinese, and in China there is no such thing as a private company. ByteDance's chief editor, Zhang Fuping, is also the boss of the company's internal Communist Party cell. And guess what? TikTok is feeding pro-Hamas propaganda all over the TikTok algorithm. They've been doing it with transgenderism, and now they're doing it with pro-Hamas propaganda. You need to delete TikTok from your children's phones. You do not need to be on TikTok. It is a Chinese surveillance site that is indoctrinating American kids into radical causes supported by China. The Chinese are spreading anti-Semitism on it, and they're spreading transgenderism on it, and your kids' brains are being poisoned by the communist Chinese through TikTok. Delete the app, please. Americans for Prosperity is out fighting this insanity. They're fighting the Biden agenda. They want you on their side. Americans for Prosperity has chapters in 36 states, and they're growing in all the other states as well. They've got more than 4 million activists. They fight for free markets and free people. They educate you on how the Biden agenda is bad so that you can relate it accessibly, easily to your neighbors, to your friends, to your family. Not only that, but Americans for Prosperity teaches you how to be an effective fighter for conservatism, how to go to your local school board or your local city council and fight for school choice and charter schools, to go to your state legislature and fight for free markets and deregulation and school choice. If you're a supporter of school choice, Americans for Prosperity wants you on their side. They fight for school choice, and they can use all the help they can get. Go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric today. americansforprosperity.org/ERICK. You support Americans for Prosperity. They support free markets and free people. They support fighting against big government and teach you how to limit government. They're great folks. They want you on their side. americansforprosperity.org/ERICK. Greetings, welcome. It is Eric Erickson. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. Should you wish to be on the show, today's an open line Friday, so you can come up with wild card topics. Just don't be crazy, people. Don't be crazy. You know, when I started radio, I started 9 to midnight, and everybody was complaining about the Obama phones back in the day. Remember the Obama phones, where Obama was giving people cell phones that had free minutes and stuff so they could try to get jobs, and it was a real thing. It was a real thing. And after 9 p.m., you got free minutes, or after 10 p.m. rather. And my gosh, the callers got insane after 10 p.m. when the Obama phones came out, and people who otherwise couldn't afford a cell phone could afford to start making phone calls. It was just insane. So don't be insane. I'm going to go to the phones. I'm going to go to Larry. Larry, welcome to the Eric Erickson Show.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Larry?
Hello, this is Jeff.
Oh, gosh, Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm looking at this call screening, and I see Jeff, and I'm going to Larry next, but I wanted to come to you, and I got your names mixed up. So, Larry,
Wonderful.
don't be talking into the phone. We're not listening. Jeff, you talk.
Okay. I'm calling to try to get you on board with propagating a couple of ideas. They're completely unrelated, but there are two of them.
Okay.
The first one is I believe that there is one word that kind of summarizes everything wrong that the Biden administration is doing with respect to tent cities and homeless camps and border security, law enforcement, the whole thing. Republicans should be using this word, in my opinion, every opportunity they can, and that word is Bidenvilles.
Bidenvilles.
Think on that a second. Bidenvilles. Remember Hoovervilles?
Hoovervilles, yeah.
It's a reference to that. All of these tent cities are Bidenvilles. If he's so happy about talking about Bidenomics, let's talk about Bidenvilles. Now, that's not my word, but I did hear it, and I would urge you to get everybody on board with that and be talking about that at every opportunity.
It's not a bad idea, frankly. Look, it's crazy here with, what they're doing overall. Did I play this? I can't remember if I played this audio or not yesterday. Let's listen to this one, Jeff.
Folks, Bidenomics is just another way of saying the American dream. 40 years ago, trickle-down economics limited the dream to those at the top. Well, I believe every American willing to work hard should be able to get a job, no matter where they live, in the heartland, in small towns, to raise their kids on a good paycheck and keep their roots where they grew up.
He says this, Jeff, but Bidenomics has been a disaster for everyone. I can't believe they're still trying to own Bidenomics, and yeah, you throw in the Bidenvilles there now, and man, it's just he's allowed us to be able to brand him badly.
Exactly, and I think this is the way to go about it. I urge you to talk to everybody you can, all the people you can influence. This should be showing up everywhere. Now, the second reason I'm calling is completely unrelated.
All right.
I've been in Georgia for about 8 years. I got here as soon as I could.
Good.
But I've been a ratepayer to Georgia Power during all that time, and during that time, Georgia Power ratepayers have been paying extra to fund the building of the atomic plants, nuclear plants, Plant Vogtle 3 and 4.
Right.
3 has just come online. 4, they're just starting to load the fuel, and I think that's wonderful. We should have plenty of power for the Southeast for forever. But now what's going on is the state is being invaded, literally invaded, by people coming in to use our now inexpensive power to do Bitcoin mining, of all things. Are we to say that the ratepayers have been making all these payments so we can subsidize Bitcoin mining? Somebody should be getting really excited about this, in my opinion.
Yeah, look,
and you're my nominee.
Jeff, listen, I appreciate this. And for those of you who don't know, these Bitcoin farms where people are mining for Bitcoins, they collectively use more power than a number of nations. They use high-intensive graphic processing units on computers, and they use a ton of energy. And I do kind of wonder if there's you make a great point here. We in Georgia have been paying to build a nuclear power facility. And realistically, I know Georgia Power begs to differ, but I do kind of believe the projections that we're never actually going to get our money's worth back on the savings based on nuclear power, given the cost overruns in building the plant. It was still the right thing to do, but yet the amount of energy some of these people are starting to use for Bitcoin mining in the South. In fact, there's a facility, this is outside of Georgia, it's in Austin, Texas. There's a Bitcoin mining facility where they actually use more power in that one facility the entirety of the nation of Sweden uses in its power grid. Just think about that. It's crazy. It really is remarkable how much energy is being spent there. All right, now, Larry, I'm sorry. I called on Jeff and I said Larry. So, Larry, I'm going to call on you and call you Larry. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And the reason I called is I have a question. As we all know, the left, or progressive, whatever you want to call them, basically, if I was a man, if I felt I was a woman trapped in a man's body, they would move heaven and earth to make sure that I can transition my body to something it really isn't supposed to be, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I actually honestly believe with my heart and soul that I'm Napoleon Bonaparte. And I was wondering if you thought the left would help me go in and reestablish the throne in France and help me get back on that throne.
Well, Your Majesty, I think, first of all, I'm honored that you would call and discuss this with me. And secondly, maybe we should try to reestablish your throne. I mean, since the syphilis hadn't gotten you in your next life, after it got him in his first life, among other things, my goodness. Listen, this is a point I've made somewhat sarcastically over time as well, that if we're basing identity, why can't it be? Well, go beyond that, Larry. Go beyond you're the return of Napoleon, or the king, you identify as the King of England. I mean, why is it that people like Rachel Dolezal and Sean King get to identify as black or not? Why is racial identity different from gender identity? And none of it makes any sense. It's all a mental illness. I mean, it really is insane. And honestly, Larry, your call is the perfect jumping off point on where I wanted to go this half hour anyway, before phone calls. Have you noticed that there are not a lot of calls of progressive activists to release the hostages from Hamas? They all want a ceasefire. They say ceasefire, ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. But notice that they don't say we need a ceasefire and Hamas should give up the hostages to make it happen. The level of anti-Semitism on MSNBC these days. I mean, listen to Peter Beinart. Peter Beinart he'll say he's Jewish, but so listener Chris emailed me and said, actually, the Richmond Times-Dispatch did cover the anti-Semitic protest that state legislator was at, but they noted it was organized by a group called Jewish Voices for Peace, which is actually a pro-Palestinian group of people who support boycotting, divesting, and getting out of not doing business with Israel. So it's a far-left anti-Semitic group that calls itself Jewish. Peter Beinart is the far-left writer. I think he's still with the New Republic, but he's one of those people who says, I'm Jewish, so let me tell you why you should hate the Jews. Listen to this guy on MSNBC.
No, in fact, not only is it just fundamentally wrong to kill innocent people who had nothing to do with the evil attack that Hamas committed on October 7th, we know that Hamas recruits its fighters from the families of people who were killed by Israel, right? So for every person you kill, it's not just that is immoral to kill innocent people. It's also that you are producing the next generation of fighters who you will be having to deal with a generation later. And even if it's not called Hamas, it's Hamas 3.0. The truth is the Palestinians have been fighting against Israel and resisting Israel since the very beginning and will continue to, sometimes in ethical ways and sometimes in horrific ways, until they have their basic rights, because that's what all human beings do. All human beings resist oppression. The United States was not occupying Japan when Pearl Harbor happened. Israel is occupying millions of Palestinians in the West Bank, and yes, also in Gaza, because it controls it. It's like a prison. It controls it with Egypt from the perimeter. And
notice the Hamas talking point that Israel controls it like a prison. If Hamas wasn't trying to kill Jews, you wouldn't have this. Mark Lamont Hill was fired by CNN for some seriously anti-Semitic statements that he made at the United Nations. He called yet again for a free Palestine from river to sea, which is Hamas rhetoric for ending Israel. Listen to Mark Lamont Hill. He was at a protest last night.
The truth is that history didn't start on October 7th. As much as the news media wants you to think that history started on October 7th, the Palestinian people have been catching hell for over 100 years.
That over 100 years Israel hadn't been around that long. Listen to what he blames.
That for 100 years, it's been a settler colonial project. For 75 years, it's been ethnic cleansing.
For 100 years, colonial settler project. That is, Jews going to Israel. For 75 years, Israel founded. What is that about? What is that about? It's about Israel being given any land whatsoever, a sliver of land for its people. And he says that's been ethnic cleansing. No, actually, Israel was willing to live there with the existing people, but those existing people wanted to kill the Jews.
We got to tell the truth about that. Tonight, we demand a ceasefire.
We demand a ceasefire. A man who's called for the annihilation of the Jewish state demands a ceasefire. Isn't that rich? This is something that I just find very interesting. When Morning Joe on MSNBC goes off the air at 10 a.m. and for every hour thereafter until Joe Scarborough comes back on the next day, MSNBC gets increasingly, progressively pro-Palestinian propagandist. By the end of the day, you've got people on there just giving the Hamas propaganda line. For a network that lectures Republicans about being honest, they seem to be spreading willfully the lies of the people of Hamas. MSNBC is owned by Comcast, and it actually is stunning to me that the CEO and operator Comcast is that willing to allow anti-Semitism on its network, the River to Sea calls, among other things. It actually is striking to me that Comcast supports what amounts to a propaganda network for terrorism. The further in the day MSNBC goes away from Morning Joe until Joe Scarborough comes back on the next morning, there's really not a lot of difference between Al Jazeera and MSNBC. It is anti-Semitic, it is anti-Israel, it is anti-United States, it is anti-West, it is a propaganda network for the cause of terrorism. It is remarkable to me that Comcast gets away with this. Warner Brothers gets heartburn every time anything goes awry at CNN. CNN has a level of prestige that MSNBC doesn't have, which is why Comcast, to a degree, can get away from it. But at some point, there needs to be a wake-up call among the shareholders of Comcast that they continue to fund a network that voices the propaganda talking points of the terrorist organization Hamas, and they have no intention of cleaning it up. You, a shareholder of Comcast, you ultimately are responsible for subsidizing terrorist propaganda across NBC, and you should be aware of that. And no, I don't own stock in that company. I don't want to. I don't want to subsidize terrorists and their talking points. Swiss America wants to educate you on the war on cash in this country. 10 regional banks have had their credit downgraded. Now, these banks are going to keep making profits. And if they don't make profits, we've got a bunch of too big to fail banks in the country. And they're probably going to be sold to them, even though they shouldn't be sold to them. Swiss America is trying to educate you about the financial schemes that are out there, particularly this war on cash led by the government and private corporations, so that you got to use credit cards and they can give you a social score and control your spending. You got all this stuff happening in the economy right now. Let them educate you. You can get your report, The Secret War on Cash, free by calling or texting 800-289-2646. It's a war on cash. It includes digital forms of currency. You can read the report for free. All you do is mention my name, Eric Erickson, when you call or text 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. You can call or text. Just give my name. If you text or call, give them my name, Eric Erickson. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. That's SwissAmerica.com/Eric, ERICK, or call or text my name to 800-289-2646. Message and data rates do apply. I said it wrong earlier. It was the Roanoke Times that covered the Virginia protest. Not, of course, I was surprised to hear it was the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I misread the email, though. Thanks, Chris, for correcting me. The Roanoke newspaper covered it, but the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the largest in the state, of course it didn't cover it. Good. I was right on that. I wasn't wrong after all. Now, this hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you're in charge of a business and banks are giving you the runaround and your business is trying to grow, you see opportunity there, and banks just don't know what they see right now in the current economic environment, reach out to First Liberty Building and Loan. They might be able to help you. They make their own lending decisions. Buying a building, you need $250,000 or more to buy a franchise, something like that. That's what they do. FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. Tell them I sent you. Just spend a few minutes with them. It's an open line Friday here. The phone number 877-973-7425. I don't have time at the moment to take a call and do it justice, but I got to tell you, so my daughter at the very end of August turned 18. We're going to Louisiana tonight to see my dad. It's his 85th birthday on Monday. It is, or as he says, the 45th anniversary of his 40th birthday. And I totally forgot until I checked in for our flight last night that the moment you hit 18, you no longer get to coast on your parents' pre-check. So my kids got to go through the general security line while my wife and son and I can go through the pre-check line. Now, I'll take her through the general line, take off my shoes and my belt and be like one of you poor people go through. I pay for pre-check to avoid that stuff. It's going to be like taking Philip to the airport, except I got to go through the line with him to hold his hand, except it'll be my kid. Philip will not get pre-check. I'm going to have to let him miss his flight one time, I guess, for him to actually realize how much better it would be to get pre-check. I will pay for him to be in first class, so he gets the first class line. And my kid will too tomorrow night or tonight. But I need to get my kid pre-checked. She's already got her appointment for her meeting to get her fingerprints done, so she can get pre-check. I don't know. It just seems like if you're traveling as a family and 364 days in before the day before you turn 18, you get pre-check. And the day after you don't, that just seems kind of dumb. It's still the same family, the same person. Why can't you just tie it, particularly when the tickets were bought before her birthday? That aggravates me. The government aggravates me. This whole theater of security that really doesn't do anything aggravates me. And now we got to pay for the privilege of being able to travel like we did before September 11th, 2001, when so much of it really is just security theater. Let's be honest about it. It's the number of people who have gotten guns accidentally through the airport unintentionally and stuff like that just boggles my mind that we have to lower our shampoo bottle sizes and the Ziploc bag and take off our shoes and our belt to go through a line. The whole process of flying, and it's gotten more expensive to fly too. I actually want to talk about this a little while later. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about all this and about the fastest way to board a plane, which is not what you think. But the process of flying is increasingly inconvenient for a middle-class person. It is extremely expensive right now to fly and extremely a pain in the butt, particularly if you're flying through my airport, Two Dead Mares International in Atlanta, where they've torn down all the parking decks, so there's nowhere for you to even park. We're going to have a car take us to the airport because there's no parking spots available. It's insane. I could complain about travel all day, but I won't. When we come back, we got to complain about Democrats treating Mike Johnson badly.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.